Imagine standing on the deck of a ferry gliding across Elliott Bay, the sea breeze carrying a cool, salty scent, the sunset tinting the water pink, and in the distance, the Seattle skyline, Space Needle rising high like a proud emblem. But today, I'm not taking you to the postcard perfect sights. Welcome to our channel, a place that unveils the stories travel guides don't tell, the hidden corners behind the polished facade of the Emerald City. You won't see these images in glossy tourism commercials. Long, quiet lines of people forming every evening in front of free meal distribution points, hands buried deep in their pockets for warmth, eyes fixed on the charity truck as if clinging to the last glimmer of hope for the day. Just a few blocks away, multi-million-dollar lakeside condos shine brightly, their reflections shimmering on the water, a different world only steps apart. In 2025, according to the King County Regional Homeless Authority, more than 14,000 people in Seattle have no stable housing, and that number continues to rise. Many once had jobs, paid taxes, owned homes, until a sudden medical bill, a job loss, or even a single month of overdue rent was enough to push them into a downward spiral with no way out. Seattle, a city once celebrated for its creative pulse, giant tech companies, and stunning waterfront, has now become the stage for thousands of harsh survival stories. And the big question echoes: what does this say about us when the American dream turns into tragedy right in the heart of the Emerald City? Because this is not just Seattle's story, it's a mirror reflecting the choices and values of our entire society. When people think of the homelessness crisis, most immediately picture the crowded tent-lined streets of Los Angeles or San Francisco. But few realize that here in the Pacific Northwest, Seattle is becoming another hotspot, only it unfolds more quietly, less often making front-page news. Beneath the glitter of the Emerald City are lives lived under open skies, scattered across every corner, from bustling downtown to seemingly peaceful suburbs like Bellevue, Kent, or Shoreline. In early 2025, statistics from King County rang alarm bells. More than 14,000 people in Seattle lack stable housing, up nearly 15% from 2 years prior. Behind those numbers lie countless stories of loss and despair. Young families huddling with their children under thin blankets in foggy parks, makeshift tents standing alone in abandoned parking lots, or a piece of cardboard hastily laid under a freeway overpass, where the roar of traffic is constant day and night. In winter, their breath turns to white vapor, mingling with the region's signature damp, cold rain. In summer, the rare heat waves turn brutal, radiating scorching heat off asphalt and tin roofs. In the suburbs, the situation is even more invisible. There are no rows of crowded tents, just an old car parked motionless in a Walmart lot, holding an entire family's home inside. Or a lone figure curled up on a riverside bench, hiding under a worn-out coat. These people were once part of the city's daily rhythm. A software engineer recently laid off, a retail worker whose store closed, or a veteran returning with wounds both physical and emotional. Homelessness is not just the loss of a roof over one's head. It is the loss of identity, the breaking of social ties, and deep psychological wounds. Loneliness like a yawning pit, severe depression, and lingering trauma. In 2025, nearly 68% of those seeking shelter in Seattle were dealing with mental health issues. This creates a vicious cycle. No housing worsens the illness, and the illness makes escaping poverty even more out of reach. On streets like 3rd Avenue, every night, volunteer groups persistently appear with boxes of blankets, hot meals, and personal hygiene supplies. Organizations report that demand for free meals has risen by 25% in a short period. Brief conversations, polite smiles, or a warm touch between giver and receiver become rare points of light amid the thick darkness of poverty. But these efforts, admirable as they are, remain just a small patch on a massive crack. The root cause is not the lack of blankets or hot meals, but systemic issues: widening income inequality, skyrocketing housing prices far beyond the reach of most residents, and a health and social welfare system that the poor can hardly access. As long as these roots remain unaddressed, Seattle will continue to see more cold nights, more tents, and more stories left behind. If we want to understand why tents keep appearing under overpasses or along park edges, we must look deep into the structure that underpins life in Seattle, a structure that is already fractured. On paper, Seattle is still a prosperous city, home to global tech giants, where artisanal coffee shops and startups sprout like mushrooms after rain. But beneath that facade, the cost of living has risen so high that even full-time workers are constantly on the brink. The average rent for a one-bedroom apartment has surpassed $2,100 per month, while a two-bedroom often reaches $2,800. Wages for most service sector workers, restaurant staff, delivery drivers, nursing assistants, have hardly increased in proportion. Just one small setback, like a few weeks of unemployment or an unexpected medical bill, can strip an entire family of their ability to pay rent, quickly pushing them into homelessness. This storm grows fiercer when other factors strike at the same time. Mass layoffs in the tech industry, inflation eroding the value of wages, and automation eliminating thousands of entry-level jobs. Meanwhile, the supply of affordable housing has shrunk dramatically. From 2019 to 2024, Seattle lost more than 10,000 affordable rental units. In their place, luxury developments have risen in South Lake Union and Capitol Hill, beautiful, modern, and entirely out of reach for the average earner. The economic losses bring social consequences. Families breaking apart under financial strain, traditional communities losing cohesion, and a fentanyl addiction crisis casting a shadow over many neighborhoods. Stigma toward the homeless isolates them even further, pushing them out of sight and out of the safety net. The city's housing and welfare policies, while existent, often arrive too late and at too small a scale. Lengthy procedures, complex paperwork, and waiting lists stretching for years make it nearly impossible for those in urgent need to access help in time. In many cases, this delay feels like a form of intentional neglect within the system. When these factors combine, soaring rents, stagnant wages, sudden job losses, a shortage of affordable housing, and delayed social support, the result is a vicious cycle from which escape is nearly impossible. Without deep, structural reforms, this cycle will continue to swallow more lives, turning Seattle's homelessness crisis into a grim legacy the city cannot easily shake off. Living on the streets in Seattle is not just about lacking a roof. It means facing relentless rain, cold winds, dampness seeping through every layer of clothing, and sleepless nights filled with the constant hum of traffic. The Pacific Northwest's winters may not be as bone-chilling as the East Coast's, but the damp cold sinks into the bones, making every morning a new battle. Without access to restrooms, clean water, or bathing facilities, even maintaining basic health becomes a challenge. This pressure quickly erodes both body and mind. Prolonged stress, restless sleep, and irregular meals push the body to the brink of collapse. At Belltown's community clinic, healthcare workers report that more than 60% of homeless patients suffer from chronic illnesses that remain untreated. These are not just colds or backaches, they are diabetes, heart disease, and chronic lung conditions, ailments that require ongoing medical care, which for the unhoused is almost an unattainable luxury. The impact of this crisis does not stop at those directly experiencing homelessness. It spreads throughout the community. Parks once meant for children's play become hotspots of instability. Bus stops turn into makeshift overnight shelters, and downtown streets face the sight of tents crowding the sidewalks. Tourism, an important part of Seattle's economy, has been affected as visitors avoid areas they perceive as unsafe. Retail revenue in the downtown core has dropped nearly 18% compared to 3 years ago, partly because of reduced foot traffic and partly because the city's image has been overshadowed by its social challenges. Hospitals, clinics, and emergency services are also under heavy strain. When the weather turns extreme cold, damp winters, or sudden heat waves, the number of people seeking emergency rooms spikes. This not only drains the public health budget, but also lengthens wait times for all patients, no matter who they are. Perhaps the most concerning long-term consequences are for children. Kids living in homelessness often move from place to place, miss school, and have little access to extracurricular activities or support services. Numerous studies show they are more likely to face severe psychological issues, struggle to form healthy social connections, and risk continuing the cycle of poverty into adulthood. Each tent pitched on a street corner today could be the beginning of a lost generation tomorrow. And then there are the invisible losses, things that don't show up in statistical reports. There is the erosion of community trust when people begin to see those living on the streets as others, separate from themselves. There is the growing sense of helplessness when the entire city seems to have grown accustomed to the sight of tents, treating them as part of the landscape. When the abnormal becomes normal, the greatest danger is not just losing solutions, it is losing the capacity for empathy. Seattle is paying a price not only in budget figures, but in its very identity. A city once praised as creative, humane, and dynamic now has to ask itself, what will remain if we allow these dark corners to keep expanding? If the homelessness crisis is a storm that never stops sweeping through Seattle, then the social safety net should have been the solid roof sheltering the most vulnerable. In reality, that roof is not just leaky, it is tattered, letting the cold wind and damp rain blow straight into the lives of those clinging to their last hope. The problem begins with housing costs that have climbed to absurd heights. A two-bedroom apartment in Seattle now rents for over $2,800 a month on average, while a one-bedroom has already surpassed $2,100. For service sector workers, from restaurant staff and caregivers to retail employees, whose wages have barely increased in years, keeping a decent place to live has become an impossible equation. The gap between income and living costs has widened into a chasm, where even the smallest slip, a job loss, illness, or an unexpected bill, can push a family off the edge and out of their home. At the same time, upscale urban development has fueled the fire. In South Lake Union and Capitol Hill, luxury high-rises keep going up, glistening in the sunlight reflected off the lake. But behind that shine, thousands of affordable units are quietly disappearing. Older buildings are demolished or renovated, with rents raised so high that low-income residents are entirely priced out. Affordable housing shrinks by the day, replaced by apartments whose monthly rent can equal a working family's annual income. Shelters and food banks, often considered the last line of defense, are buckling under the pressure. Empty beds and shelters are as rare as gold, and wait lists are so long that people can spend weeks or even months before their turn comes. Many who arrive hoping for a place to sleep end up leaving in the night because capacity has run out, taking with them the flicker of hope that just appeared. Charitable food pantries face the same situation. Supplies run out quickly as demand soars, forcing them to cut portions or turn people away. Yet even when resources are available, the welfare system often deters many from seeking help because of its cumbersome procedures. For someone without a fixed address, providing the necessary documents to prove identity and status can be an almost impossible challenge. These seemingly small administrative requirements, in reality, can slam the door shut on those in urgent need of assistance. Waiting periods for support approvals can stretch for months, long enough for a minor illness to become chronic, or for someone on the brink of stability to fall deeper into crisis. The problem is worsened by the fact that most existing support programs are designed on a small scale, serving only a few hundred people, while the real need is in the tens of thousands. This gap leaves many who technically qualify for aid still excluded. Those lucky enough to enter the program often live with the constant fear of being pushed out once the assistance period ends, without any long-term solution in place. All these factors combine to form a vicious cycle. Those who want to escape homelessness lack opportunities, and those who have managed to take one step out of crisis can be pulled right back in. With each passing day, as housing prices continue to climb and income inequality deepens, the holes in the social safety net only grow larger. Seattle still has individuals and organizations working tirelessly to mend that net, through hot meals, warm blankets, or a few nights of safe shelter. But when the larger system allows the holes to keep spreading, these efforts, though valuable, are like patching a torn sail in the middle of a storm. And without systemic intervention, combining political will, meaningful resources, and social empathy, this storm will continue to sweep away not just the roofs over people's heads, but also the belief that we, as a community, can protect one another. If the previous sections have portrayed Seattle as a ship tossed in the storm of homelessness, then this part is the compass and the oars, the only tools that can help the vessel find its course again. And first, we must begin with a foundational principle. Housing is not a privilege, but a basic human right. When a society accepts this as an undeniable truth, every policy, budget, and action will rest on a humanitarian foundation, rather than treating giving someone a home as a favor or act of charity. From this principle, Seattle must move into a phase of bold investment and comprehensive reform in affordable housing. This requires significantly increasing public funding to build low-cost housing projects, not just pushing low-income residents to far-off suburbs, but right within central neighborhoods, where job opportunities, public services, and transport infrastructure are accessible. At the same time, rental assistance policies must be adjusted to match real market fluctuations, preventing vulnerable households from being priced out simply because of a rent hike. The city should also offer tax incentives to developers willing to allocate land or build projects dedicated to the community, turning affordable housing development into an attractive segment of the real estate market instead of a burden. However, building housing alone is not enough. Seattle needs an integrated support system, a one-stop network where homeless individuals can access multiple essential services at once: mental health care, addiction treatment, job training, legal aid, and career counseling. The goal is not only to lift them out of crisis temporarily, but to walk with them until they secure stable jobs, sustainable incomes, and a full return to social life. This model has proven effective in many parts of the world. When all services are connected, those in need are not left wandering between agencies and bureaucratic hurdles. Alongside emergency relief, early prevention measures must be in place. Before someone falls into homelessness, the city needs mechanisms to intervene. Emergency financial aid after job loss, mediation in rental disputes to prevent eviction, and expanded programs for personal financial management education, equipping people with skills to control spending and handle risks. Every case saved from falling over the edge means one home preserved, one crisis story that never begins. Yet no plan, no matter how detailed or promising, will move beyond paper unless it overcomes the biggest barrier: a lack of political will and social consensus. This is not solely the responsibility of city government, it demands the participation of the community and civil society organizations. Leaders must be willing to place this issue at the top of their agendas, even if it means sacrificing glamorous projects to allocate funds for basic needs. Businesses and the private sector must recognize that a safe, equitable city fosters a healthier, more sustainable business environment. Citizens must shed the us versus them mindset, understanding that anyone can lose their home when life suddenly turns against them. Real solutions cannot come from a single side. They require a coalition of action where government, businesses, nonprofits, and residents all work toward the shared goal of a Seattle where everyone has a home and no one is left behind. Only with this collective effort can initiatives avoid being scattered into small patches on an already torn safety net. If we see the city as a living body, housing is its protective skin, keeping it warm, shielding it, and providing a sense of security. When that skin is torn, it is not only the unhoused who suffer. The entire social body catches a chill. The answer is not to grow accustomed to the rips, but to mend them firmly so the whole city can move forward with stability and dignity. Amid the thousands of homelessness stories in Seattle, some are fleeting, like figures passing in the rain, and others make you stop and listen, such as Tasha's journey. Tasha was born and raised in West Seattle, where sloping streets lead to the sea and summers are filled with the scent of salt on the wind. She had once been a dedicated medical assistant in a small clinic. Her life wasn't lavish, but it was steady. A modest apartment, weekend walks in Discovery Park, and the nightly ritual of brewing a cup of hot tea. Everything began to change when her mother fell seriously ill. With no one else to care for her, Tasha left her job to be by her mother's side full-time. Savings dwindled, medical bills piled up, and one day, an eviction notice appeared at her door. Within months, Tasha went from having a job and a home to having nowhere to return to. She carried a few sets of clothes, a sleeping bag, and chose a park bench in Discovery Park as her new bed. The nights there were longer than any she had known, waves crashing against the shore mixed with the wind rustling through pine branches, but neither could drown out the pounding of her heart and fear. Each morning she would wake early to avoid the gaze of joggers and walkers, quietly packing her belongings as if she had never been there. The turning point came on an autumn morning, when Tasha met a social worker doing rounds in the park. This person didn't just exchange polite words, they listened to her story in full. The next day, Tasha was referred to a transitional housing program where she had a small room, a clean bed, and a door she could lock at night. Simple things that, for her, felt like priceless luxuries. From there, Tasha began rebuilding her life step by step. She received support for mental health counseling, learned personal financial management skills, and was referred to a healthcare facility that was hiring. A year later, She was back in the job she loved, sharing a small apartment with a friend from the program, and spending weekends volunteering to help people in the position she had once been in. "I used to believe that as long as I worked hard, I'd never end up here," Tasha said, "but life doesn't give warnings. And when everything falls apart, one hand reaching out at the right time can change everything." Tasha's story is a vivid reminder that the homelessness crisis is not just about numbers. Behind every statistic is a person with a past, pain, and the potential to rebuild. And sometimes, all they need is one open door to step out of the darkness. By the shore of Lake Union, sunset spills across the water like a thin sheet of gold, reflecting off the glass walls of luxury high-rises. Everything here gleams, calm and pristine, like an advertisement for modern living. Yet just a few miles away, beneath the I-5 overpass, is an entirely different reality. Makeshift tents patched from tarps and scrap wood, trucks roaring overhead and shaking the ground, and the damp cold of wind and rain seeping through every gap. These two worlds exist in the same city, but are divided by an invisible distance, the gap of inequality, between safety and precarity, between wealth and poverty. That gap is not measured only in rent prices or income, but in opportunity, in care, and in access to the most basic things needed to live. And the question for all of us is, what kind of society do we want to build? A city that looks good only on postcards and in economic reports, or a community that truly keeps its promise that no one will be left behind? This is not just a story about policies or budgets, it's a story about the core values we choose to define ourselves. The unhoused are not outsiders, or someone else's problem. They could be the neighbor who once smiled and greeted you in the morning, the former coworker who used to share coffee breaks with you, or the veteran who once wore the uniform to protect the country. When we recognize this, the line between them and us begins to dissolve, replaced by a thread of human connection, built on mutual understanding and respect. Closing that gap is not something that exists only on the City Council's agenda or in the reports of social organizations. It begins with empathy and tangible action from each of us. No single person can end the homelessness crisis alone, but everyone can contribute by volunteering at meal distribution points, donating warm blankets and essential supplies, or simply speaking up in support of fair housing policies. Small actions, when added together, can create a wave strong enough to change the course of the entire city. We must also remember one truth: affordable housing is not a privilege, it is a basic human right. A city is only truly strong when all its members have a place to call home. Seattle can absolutely become living proof of this principle if the community, government, and organizations work together, not just by building more houses, but by building a support system where anyone has the opportunity to rebuild their life. That vision is not a distant dream. It is a promise that one day, beneath the I-5 overpass, there will no longer be makeshift tents huddled in the wind, but open doors leading to safety, stability, and hope. A day when Seattle is a place where everyone, no matter their past, has the chance to start over. And that day will come closer if we act together, starting now. If you believe that every person deserves a home, please like and share this video to raise awareness, and subscribe to our channel to join us in uncovering real stories, hidden corners, and solutions that can change lives. One click from you could be the first step toward a big change, not just in Seattle, but anywhere a spark of hope is needed.